Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic. We are 6 months in from the release of my new friend, Collin Walsh, and his band Grayscale's release, The Heart. We were just discussing this before I pressed record. He's not tired of this music yet, and I don't blame him. It is a fantastic album. I actually threw on my Beats headphones last night and drifted off into sleep to this album. It is fantastic. Collin, how the hell are you, man?
Doing well, man. Yeah, it's glad to hear I'm helping put you to sleep at night. That's
Not in that way. Come on, bro.
no. I'm saying you've been falling asleep to my voice to our band's music. It's
Yes,
an honor.
absolutely.
That's how I meant it. Yeah.
I just gotta give you shit, man.
No, for sure. We're good. We're all is well in the Grayscale camp. We're excited. We just got back from tour with Mayday Parade. It was wonderful. We have a busy year ahead, and in cycle with our record, The Heart. It came out late January, like you said, and it's been great. It's been incredible. It's our favorite record as a band. It's had an unbelievable response, and we're feeling good.
Good deal. Good deal. Now you've kind of been doing this this promotion cycle for this album since July of 2023. So you've been dropping like singles throughout since then, with the full album release coming out in January of this year. What has that ramp up been like for you?
Yeah, it's been amazing. We wrote Not Afraid to Die kind of out in front of the rest of the album, and we had it mixed and put it out first as sort of like a bridge single. And in the meantime, we were recording the rest of the album. We had a lot of songs written, we just hadn't gotten into the studio and properly cut them. But it's been awesome. And I think what's cool, like, we're definitely an album band. We always will be, but at the same time, like, it's kind of cool, with just the nature of things now. Like, you're always sort of in cycle. It's just a matter of, how frequently you're putting out music, how frequently you're touring. But I think just the way, like, the nature of music right now, like, you can put out kind of singles on their own out in front of an album, and it can be, put on that album eventually if you want, or you can just wait to put out the record, whatever you want. So you can be in cycle as long as you kind of choose to, and you can take time off, whenever you want at the same time. So it's a cool way to do things. It's kind of unpredictable.
That's a question that's actually come up a lot on the show, is how people feel about the new release strategy. It used to be this thing where you'd release one or two singles, then the album would drop, and then everybody would kind of discover the rest of the album once it was fully released. But now it's kind of engineered in a different way, where songs trickle out every 2 to 3 months and then the album releases. Do you have any particular feelings about that?
I mean, I'm always like an album person. I definitely prefer the 2 or 3 singles in the album, but we're all just living under the Spotify overlords at this point. So that's just the nature of, like, when you explain it to people. But I don't like putting out half a record first, but it's the way the pitch structure for playlisting is and DSPs, and it's like, it just is the nature of it. But I do think, on the other hand, artists have found a way to be creative. Like, I think what we were kind of talking about earlier is, like, if you want to put out a music video and really emphasize that on socials or whatever, late months and months or a year later in the from the release, you can kind of do that. You always could, but I think with, like, short form, the benefit of that is you can kind of do it without spending a ton of money on a music video for it if you want. So
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And thank you for being incredibly honest about it, because I've talked to some guys that'll, like, say one thing on recording, and then the minute the record button stops, we're like, "No, I fucking
Oh
hate
no,
that
dude.
way we released that."
You're not gonna get that with us, dude. You're not gonna get. If anything, I'm gonna get you in trouble.
I love it. I think that is kind of a musician's preference thing. It's like, you would almost rather, as a former band guy myself, you'd almost rather release your entire work as opposed to, like, just trickle it out like that. Because sometimes I know, by the time the release comes, and it's happened with past albums for myself, the album almost feels dead if you've over promoted it and over singled it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the genre. I think it depends on the record. Like, if I think it's easier, like, when we write records, like our record, The Heart, that came out, it's like, it was very much written in, um, written, recorded, and track listed out with the intention of it being a story and like a full record and uh, one piece of art. You know what I mean? With all the elements of like the physical vinyl and everything. But I think in like pop and other genres, it just doesn't quite apply as much. It depends on, in my opinion, it depends on like the content of the music, like the lyrics of the music, or like the storytelling of it, how in depth it is, or whatever. It depends if it warrants being one complete piece of work or not. I'll always be an album guy. I think Grayscale will always be an album band, but um, yeah, it's just preference, I guess.
Well, let's talk about Grayscale for a moment more in depth. Let's get to the origin story of the band. You guys formed right around 2011, and you signed with your label right around 2017. Let's get into the origin of how the band came together and what brought you from there to here now.
Yeah, I mean, like we say 2011 is the origin. Really, we became like a full-time band, a touring band in 2017. 2018 is when we put out a record in 2017, a full length, like on a label, and started full-time touring then. So that's really probably, we had some self-released EP, or like like kind of smaller indie label type thing in 2015 with our record What We're Missing. But 2011 was kind of when we just, we've been friends since we were like 13, 14 years old, all of us, like in and around the Philly area. And I feel like I don't even know how old I was then, but that was probably, I mean, I must have been like sophomore in high school or something, junior in high school. So that timeline is really when we just started, playing music and under the name that we thought was cool, Grayscale. I don't
Yeah,
really think it wasn't at the time, like it wasn't a fully functioning band by any means, but we kind of use that time. We think it's cool. Like we think the timeline of like, this is when we were kids and we had this name, and we do covers in the basement, and do house shows with the original music in Philly and stuff growing up. So we like to, that's kind of why we have that 2011 mark as like
sure.
our formation. Yeah.
Sure. So when did that switch flip for you guys where you knew it was like, this is the shit, it's time to make it happen? Like, and you made that big push in 2017. What was the catalyst for that?
I mean, it might have been around 2014, 2015. We started just playing. I mean, that whole timeline was like the dark ages before we had discovered fire. Like it was like early civilization Grayscale. But, we were just playing like opening local shows and playing DIY basement shows to nobody, driving hours to play shows to the other bands, like just the normal absolute eating shit that is part of, touring and being a band early on, being an
Right.
artist. We did that until we started to, have enough of like a small group of fans in like the Philly area from playing like college basements and whatever, house shows, whatever, to the point where there was this venue called the Barbary at the time. It closed down. It's actually opened again now. But Grayscale kind of became like the local band that would open for touring packages at the Barbary. And then you do that enough times and you're a little bit bigger. Then eventually we like headlined the Barbary around probably 2015 with that What We're Missing album that we had, or as an EP, whatever, I guess technically, long EP. And then we did that headline show, and somewhere along the lines, like just grinding it out and growing a local fan base, like a booking agent had reached out to me when I was walking home from class, when I went to Drexel University in Philly. I think it might have been my sophomore, junior year in high school, college, something like that. And then that agent kind of started putting us in touch with management, who put us in touch with labels. And it kind of happened for us very quickly, where all of a sudden, like in the span of a couple of weeks, we went from being like the band that opened the local shows to the band that had headlined, like some shows in the area, to, that week or 2 weeks or so, it was like we had an agent, a manager, and we're talking to labels shortly after.
Wow.
So then we ended up signing with the label Fearless Records. Did our 3-record deal with them. They were great to us. I think people talk a lot of shit on labels, and I get why. I think for the most part, like we were really happy with how we treated, and we are, definitely like on good terms and satisfied with like our time there. And yeah, I dropped out of college, and then that was it, man. We just started fucking touring until COVID hit and everybody put on the brakes in the world, and then COVID ended and we're back touring, 100 plus shows a year again.
So you released an album like right before COVID hit, like in 2019.
Yeah, Nella Vita, our second full length record on Fearless. Yeah.
Right. So how did the pandemic affect your trajectory from your point of view?
I mean, I think it just was like, I think everybody in the music industry suffered really, no matter what
Yeah.
level people were at. I think we were fortunate enough to kind of have our first headlining full US tours out before COVID, and we just got them in. I think like the A market of it was in the fall of 2018, and then the B market was like winter 20. Oh no, I have my years mixed up. Sorry, it might have been like fall of 2019. We did our US A market headliner, and then like January, February ish, 2020 we did our B market tour, like US headline. And
Yeah.
then the pandemic hit in like March of 2020 or whenever, or April, something like around then.
It was St. Patty's weekend is when it hit.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when
Yeah.
everything shut down. I was driving back from Colorado back home to Lincoln, Nebraska as things were shutting down. And I'm like taking phone calls from my day job. They're like, oh, so and so quit, so and so quit, so and so quit. There are all these college students that worked for me. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. It was a crazy time for any industry. I think the music industry specifically too, because even coming back to touring in 2022 or whatever, it was still weird. And then it kind of like another variant would come, and then it was shut down, and it was like super political, and it was hard. But I think it sucked for everybody. But I think Grayscale was fortunate enough to get like our like footing as like a headlining US act kind of on paper, and that was helpful to pick up where we left off sort of as things opened up again. But as like a band that tours and loves to tour, and like live music is a huge part of who we are. It's what we really value and pride ourselves on. Like it was tough being stuck at home for sure.
Yeah. So, from your personal perspective, once things started to open back up, do you feel like people started to reinvest into live music and rock bands in particular again after things opened up? I don't know. It's just maybe my personal perspective, but I feel like the touring industry has really taken off more recently than what it was pre-pandemic.
I think it took a minute. Like when touring came back the first time, it wasn't really like you're
Right.
playing shows in places where everybody is like masked up and everybody's afraid to touch each other, and like it just wasn't quite the same. To be honest with you, I don't think the fun element of it was really back until like as late as last year, like
Yeah, I agree.
2024. Like it existed in 2023 and early 2024, but like I would say just from like me, like just from our time doing it, like late 24, early 25 even was when it was like, okay, this is like
Right.
it's fully back. It's like everybody's flowing, like shows are going again. And yeah, but I think, like I said, I think it was our industry specifically was very, very impacted by it, like long term. I think more than people realized.
Oh,
When fucking Live Nation is giving bands like that, they have that Willie Nelson on the Road, which is a really cool program where they're giving bands gas, and like they were doing things to help musicians. Like when when Live Nation, the same people who are fucking the whole ticket mat, like when they're being charitable towards people, like it was rough because
right.
that's not really their mo. And I'm not talking shit. That's every industry has that kind of corporate overlord type of thing. But that was a sign to me where I'm like, damn, dude, this is tough for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, it's weird, because I thought about it, like, right around 2023, all of a sudden, new venues started to pop up in my market, and kinda being the business-minded guy that I am, I'm like, "Dude, this all just shut down less than 2 years ago. Isn't this, like, an incredibly huge financial risk?" But at the same time, all of these venues have been consistently selling out shows, so I'm the fucking idiot when it comes down to it. But but you know, I know that I've made it a personal goal as a music fan to see more live concerts in 2025. Like, as a former band guy myself, the fact that I don't go to more shows as a fan is almost kind of embarrassing.
Me too, man. Honestly, I go to very few, very, very few.
Right. Do you think it's because you do it that
Yeah,
you wonder if
for
you have
sure.
the fatigue about it? That was
Definitely, man. Yeah. I mean, I just think like we were just on tour for like almost 9 weeks straight. We were in Australia, came home right to a full 7 week Mayday parade, A market tour. And like when it's 9 weeks of like you're either listening to the bus generator humming or sound check of a band or house music in between bands or whatever, like it's just noise for 9 weeks straight. Like it starts to drive you crazy. And I think coming home, just peace and quiet for a while is like really important, decompressing for me. I think I had a particularly hard time this time coming back from tour of just like settling in. But it's super important mentally for sure.
Yeah. Do you find that sometimes the fatigue of everything impedes itself upon your artistic process and your ability to create?
No, I'm pretty patient. I'm like the most impatient person ever. You could ask anybody in the band, but with art, I'm like I have all the time in the world. I don't really put a timeline on it, at least for what like when the band is making stuff. I'm a big person that doesn't. I don't rush songs. I don't like to rush songs. I take my time with them. So I wouldn't say that. I think like just having a healthy mix. Like I come home and I don't listen to music. I don't listen to the radio. I go to the gym. I don't bring headphones. Like I just I do my thing. I love like just driving my car with the radio off, windows down, like just by myself, playing video games, reading, running, working out, playing golf. Like I don't go near music at all. I don't want to talk about music. I love music to death. It's like
Right.
I love it so much, but it's like I think it's like I want to preserve it and keep it that way. And I think when you start to feel just fatigue for being in it and around it for literally 120, 150 days a year on tour, it's like you just need a break. And that's normal though. I think being able to detach from it allows the next album and the next tour to be better than it would be if you were fatigued. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I had a friend that was a restaurateur, but he was fantastic at fixing computers and building computers. And we used to give him shit all the time. We'd be like, dude, why do you not do this for a career? And he said, because I would stop loving it.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, for
oh,
sure.
okay. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. So cool. So let's get into the heart and kind of, you talked about the fact that there's an interconnectivity between all the songs on the album. Can you kind of explain that a little bit and how the concept kind of glues itself together?
Yeah, I think like Grayscale's always been a band where the records they're not concept records. They're just kind of snapshots about like where I'm at in my life, the things I'm going through, the things I've been through and reflected on, the things my friends are going through, whatever. I think what's unique about us is we've been so close for so long that a lot of the things I'm talking about on the record that are personal to me are things like the guys who are my best friends. We hang out almost every day. Like they're things they've all lived through as well. There's things like, and we've had songs whether they're released or not, about parts of their lives that are things I've lived through with them, and so on. But I think just the heart is another record. It's about life. It's a snapshot of like a lot of things that I think as an adult for me. Um, I think you reach a certain point in life where you like you just have enough wisdom and life experience and perspective where you look at things differently. I think as you mature, you start to be hit with things that you have to confront, things that are kind of eating at you or whatever in a way that maybe before, like a better example would be like there's a song called Mom on our first full length Adornment, which is about my relationship with my mom and how it was like a really hard thing and tough. And
Right.
I think at the time I was angry and wrote it's an angry punk rock song, whatever you want to call it. And then this song, um, a number of years later, 7 years later, the story, the relationship with my mom has evolved so much in the story and the perspective I've gained from coming from a place of like forgiveness and empathy and self-reflection of what I did wrong and all those things. And it just took time to have that settle in. And I think there's a lot more storytelling on this record, looking at things kind of zoomed out and like the progression of some of the stories and life, et cetera. But it's not so much like, I'm angry and I'm confused about this thing that I'm going through, and these are my emotions, and here's a bunch of emotions and poetry and colorful lines. I think this one was more storytelling oriented, like really going across emotions that maybe I couldn't make sense of before, but now are hitting me like a freight train that I have to like process or have processed, and I'm reflecting on them. So that's kind of, I think, the difference, and that's kind of the thing that ties it all together. That's what makes the heart like what it is, and why uniquely for me as a lyricist, it is the most storytelling oriented record we've ever written.
Exposing that vulnerability and processing those emotions while you're writing, how did that help you personally heal?
Yeah, I think like writing for me has always been cathartic. It always has been something I can, I like, I talk a lot with people like in my life, like my friends and shit will tell you that I don't shut up. But I think for the most part, outside of that, especially as I've like grown up, I just kind of, I'm less talkative and less, I think, I just like listening more than talking. That's just kind of like where I'm at in life at this point. It's not for any like negative reason. I just think like I've learned to value that a lot more. Sick of hearing my own voice to some degree, but yeah, I think music. My point in that is music has always been cathartic to me. I do talk a lot was the point, or did, especially when I was younger. But I think it I don't necessarily talk deep about how like I feel about things emotionally. Like I'll talk shit and my friends like we're joking, whatever, and like we'll talk about serious things we're going through. But I think actually processing the emotional components to those things that I'm going through is something that has taken me a long time. I think a lot of men struggle with it, truthfully, in a lot of ways. And I think literature writing was kind of in like high school when I discovered like, oh, I can get these feelings out in a way that like I can communicate, whether it's to myself or somebody else reading it, that like feel I don't know, there's just like there's like more comfort in it for some reason, and I found like solace in that, and building on that, loving literature and loving like lyrics and that expression. I think like it just it's pushed me more and more to be more vulnerable as I've done it. And I think all the artists that I love, like Springsteen or whoever, like all the great Stephen Jenkins from Third Eye, all like the great songwriters, they have this completely unfiltered expression and lyricism. And I think like just continuing to do this, there was a huge emphasis on like continually pushing myself to be more vulnerable, which comes with discomfort. But it's like, that's what I've always felt, all the songwriters I love, Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen, Sam Fender, Stephen Jenkins, Third Eye Blind. Like I just like, there's no filter on that. And that's art. And that's what makes it beautiful and polarizing and all that. And I was really compelled to do that, both for myself and for the sake of like what the art itself deserves. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. So when you're on tour with a band like Mayday Parade, who their musical structure is a little bit more on the upbeat side of things, how do you integrate the weight and gravity and themes of pain and resilience into a support slot like that? And how do you kind of manage balancing that out with your live performance on stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's a lot of similarities, I feel like, between Mayday and Grayscale, because Mayday, while they have like, pop rock songs, whatever you want to call them, like whatever the genre you want to choose, like the ballads are so good. And it's funny, Derek Sanders, the singer of that band, he like, we kind of sat and talked about this with the guys, and Derek was expressing how sometimes when they play their live shows, like the ballads feel like boring to fans when you're playing them. Not that they actually are, just as a performer, you're sitting on a piano and everybody, is like chilling, whereas the songs before, they're jumping around or whatever. And it was just funny. We were laughing at it. I'm like, dude, it's like, it's not boring as a listener and, to watch. I know it feels that way because you're on a piano chilling, but it's like, that band's really, really fucking good at writing ballads and
Right.
slow stuff. But it's, they're just a great band, very dynamic band. I think our band's dynamic. We have more rock and some pop rock leaning stuff on the older records that we still play, or whatever. But I don't know. I think the mixed build thing is cool too. Like matching, like Microwave was a totally different kind of band. Like Roses was a different kind of band. Like I think Like Roses and Mayday matched pretty well. But yeah, I think having the mixed bill, sometimes our set list will be catered. Like we like catering our set list towards the tour on, but also like it's kind of cool to be different on the bill. Like I think this upcoming tour with Our Last Night, it's like two bands that fit great together, and then Grayscale sandwiched in between them. It kind of makes no sense to have us, but at the same time, I think that's like exciting for the tour. I think Trevor and the guys were stoked to have us, and we're really thankful to be doing it. Honored to do it. It's their last tour, but yeah, I just I think having that change up, and it's cool to see bands of one genre and then like another band in the middle kind of changing it up on the same bill. I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good segue into a discussion topic that's come up a lot on the pod recently. You guys came into prominence about the same time streaming started to rise. And streaming has taken an exponential rise within the last 5 years, I'd say, in the post-pandemic era. I feel, and this is just my personal opinion, that music is becoming a little bit more boundless. Like when we were younger, people used to look at things as genre, as identity. Like your punk rock kids were punk rock kids, your metal kids were metal kids, your hip hop kids were hip hop kids. I find that younger audiences are now just looking at music as being music. So, do genre lines really even matter anymore?
To be honest, like I sort of have always been that way. Like I've always loved 90s hip hop. I grew up listening to a ton of like classic rock. Like my parents were always playing like Zeppelin and like also a lot of like 90s alt rock, like Everclear, Third Eye, Gin Blossoms, like all that. So like I've always been somebody who listens to all kinds of music, and I think I think it's healthy and it's good for people to hear things, to be exposed to art that they're not familiar with. Like I don't, and then in some ways, like I agree with you, but in other ways, I feel like there is kind of a thing in certain genres where they really like play it up in some
Yes.
ways too. So I don't know, like I think streaming has kind of crossed the bridge a lot, but I also feel like people in some ways will choose to like, there's a social media like visual component to things, and certain festivals that kind of like, have like a certain look, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's like
No. It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense.
like the elder emo cult thing as an example. Like we're emo, we're elder emo cult, like all that shit. Like it's, people do, I think, really identify with that. But then at the same time, to your point, like then there's in other instances, it's like you have people who never listen to hip hop that listen to Kendrick Lamar all the time now because he's like, I love Kendrick Lamar. He's amazing. He's one of my favorite artists. So yeah, I think I think it's both kind of things are happening simultaneously. But I do think the genreless thing is good, and you have like artists that blend different genres, and I think that's really cool too. To have artists that are able to do that.
I think our perspective, like mine and your perspective, is going to be a slight bit skewed because we're musicians, so by nature, we're going to listen to everything and borrow bits and pieces from everything. But it's interesting to kind of get those different perspectives. Do you think that some of this is also grounded in the fact that more musicians are running the industry now than ever before? It used to be suits that were really good at marketing. Now it's musicians, people taking control of their art, taking control of the distribution, taking control of the marketing, everything.
Yeah, probably. It probably is. And I think with that comes like people who are really putting the art forward, and people who, the way it looks and the social media plan are taking precedent before the art. So I think artists have more power now than they ever have, and I think that's great. Grayscale, we own our own label now. The main band we're close with have their own label. Our Last Night, the band, they have their own, like they're all kind of in like self-label independent type bands. I think it's an incredible thing, and it gives artists a lot of power. But I think on the other side of that, sometimes you get like, you get people that put out songs that are so bad on socials that they go viral, and all of a sudden it's like, we're all kind of laughing at like that married in a year in the suburbs. Have you seen that? You know which guy I'm talking about?
No.
You don't know which guy I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, I do know. Yeah.
He's playing acoustic guitar, and he's got like a bandana, and all his friends are with the flashlights. It's like he does that, it goes viral, and it's like people are like shitting on him, and they're like hating on him, and I'm like, but also it gains a lot of attention. I'm just sitting like watching things like that, and I'm like, is everybody's kind of bullying this guy in a way, and we're all people are kind of laughing at it online. So it's like, but it has a ton of attention. It's like, there's certain things like that where I don't understand. Like that guy could, get a label deal or go on tour and it may work. And like, it's just a weird Wild West landscape right now that I don't really understand. I don't spend a ton of time on socials, to be honest. It's not really my thing. And, but yeah, I don't know. I think it is the Wild West. I think artists have a lot of power. I think with that power comes responsibility, I guess. And you can become like a TikTok person that, it's a great way to market your music. And it also can be a way of like the world deciding that something is like funny and they're going to laugh at it and it's viral. I don't know. It's an interesting time for sure. It's very different. It's weird. So to your point, we started touring right as streaming kind of started, or we started being a full-time band right as streaming started. And like, if you are a band that was founded full-time touring in like 17, 18, when we were, the landscape since 2017, it was 2 years of like old school, just, like touring, handing out CDs, that kind of thing.
Right.
Then it was 2.5, 3 years of everybody sitting on their ass and making TikToks, like figuring out the landscape of where music was, if we were ever going to be able to tour again, because everybody's locked up in their basement. And then you have 2 years after this where it's this weird in between where we are touring again, but it wasn't the same. Now it is the same, but social still exists. It's effective in some ways. In some ways, it's like not for the right reasons. Like it's weird. Every 2.5 years, like if you're a band like Grayscale since 2017 as a full-time band, every 2 years it's been like a completely different landscape. So it's at least exciting, but it's like keeps things interesting. But we've always been a band where it's just like we write rock music, we play rock shows. That's like our bread and butter and what we love. And we do socials and stuff, and it's cool. It's a cool way to interact with your fans. And I think there's like a bunch of platforms evolving more and more to be able to interact with your fans. And it's dope that on Instagram we can post like, hey, we're going to do this pop-up event in Baltimore in 2 days, and we'll just show up and,
right,
play a couple acoustic songs, and like do a Q&A and meet people. Like that's cool too. So yeah.
It's funny you bring all that up because just the other day, ironically, I was scrolling on TikTok and I saw an industry expert talking about song structure and how you're going to start seeing singles get shorter and shorter and shorter, that he thinks that within 5 years, like the old rule used to be 3 minutes, 30 seconds. That was the perfect length of time for a song that you were going to release as a single. He thinks within the next 5 years, you're going to see a big trend of songs under 2 minutes. And I'm like, how the hell do you even get to the point in under 2 minutes? Unless you're the White Stripes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the other thing, it was like 3:30 as a song, and like the first chorus needs to hit it 20 seconds too, or 30 seconds. So it became like, not only is it short, but it's like, oh, that intro that you love, that riff, like cut it in half and cut V1 in half and whatever, Right. But like, yeah, I don't know. But then again, it's like artists I love, like Sam Fender or like Fontaine's DC, Wonder Horse. There's a lot of like British rock bands that I really love, or Irish rock bands, whatever. They don't give a shit. Like they're not doing that, and they're. So I think what, to me, you're kind of seeing people that like the culture of rock music is dope, because if you're a band that, you're gonna have songs that you're gonna have a 5-minute, 6-minute ballad that goes deep, like. Yes, streaming, it's not going to be pushed to playlisting, but it's also like, who gives a fuck about that? Because every time when we play it, it's like live when you play it as a band, like Mum 2, for example, is by far my favorite song on our record, The Heart. All of the guys in the band, like fans, really connect with it so deeply. And while it's not the one, because it's over 5 minutes, that gets pushed to fucking all new rock playlists, it's like, I don't give a shit about that. And like, I think it's going to start just showing of people who basically like, are you writing for playlisting? Are you writing for sync? Are you writing for the audience? Or are you making art? And it's like, you can do either. I'm not being critical either way. Do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. But I just think you'll attract the types of fans that are looking for different things. And if and that, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's like, it's not even a question for me. Like we've just never been a band of like, when we write music, there's no aspect of us that's like, will this get X playlists on Spotify or Apple? You know what I mean? It's like, if so, let's cut it down from 5 minutes. Do we really need the bridge and the outro? Of course, it's like, we do. This is how we want it to sound. And it's like, yeah, I think, yeah, I just think that's the way. I
Well,
don't know. Like,
and even to counter myself here, there is, in my opinion, there is also a trending movement towards authenticity again, though, too. So, like, you talk about the superficiality of like TikTok trends and people creating music just for the sake of these trends. There's other people that are eating that alive right now and saying, okay, we're ready for the OGs to come back. We're ready for these big anthemic 5 minute long songs, and so an artist can completely get flesh out their whole concept.
and I think like you see, like an example. I mean, I don't know if this is the best example. I don't care. I'll just explain it anyway. From like my perspective, is like anybody that watched what Turnstile was doing knew that what happened was coming. But you see these people that don't, like Turnstile is a great example of a band that just they make their art with like so much intention and heart in what they're doing that it's like, and then some of the records are more genre blending than others. But as like a hardcore band, it's like that didn't, TikTok or what, like, even if I don't know, I don't have TikTok, I've never downloaded the app, but like
Right.
I have to imagine, even without being on it, the reason people like Turnstile and why there's been this big, like blow up or whatever it's been this swelling wave of like growth through authenticity and playing super authentic art and really believing in it and making other people believe in it. It has nothing, whether viral moments or not. I don't know if they have, maybe they have, maybe I'm talking, out of my ass, but I just, there's other examples of bands that like, I like that, you can have a moment on TikTok or whatever, but that isn't the reason why some of these things happen. It's not why, it's that might be something that happens along the way, but it's not the focus of those bands, is not that, you know what I mean? So I think as musicians, it's something that, yeah, people see that coming. I think like, I remember that Fontaine's DC band. I loved that band for like a while. And that's another one. Like I remember that last record, like it, people started discovering it, and just like as time went on, like they put out that new record Romance, and it just was like different and real and authentic and like weird. Like it had like a weirdness to it that's like, and when you look back at all the other bands, like I'm not like a crazy Radiohead fan, Nick, our drummer, is, but it's like bands that take risks and creatively do things like that and do things in an interesting way, like hats off to them. That's like, there's a lot of risk in that, but that's where like the best art comes from, is just like a fearlessness and an authenticity and all that shit. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. And this is a good segue to the next portion here. We're kind of looking through the windshield as opposed to rear view mirrors. What's in the imminent future for Grayscale outside of this tour with Our Last Night?
Well, we're just touring a ton. Our record is like, the response has been incredible. I don't see, we're basically touring on it as long as we want until, it's time to put out new music. But yeah, we're just like enjoying living in it right now, and doing a ton of touring, hitting the road as like hard as we can. We have our first headliner after Our Last Night. Our Last Night is August, September in the US, and then November we go and we do our first UK Europe headliner as a band, which we're really excited about. December we always do some kind of like holiday show type of thing in Philly, in our hometown. I think this year it'll be earlier in December than normal, which will give people some time to not, I think it's tough for people to like fly in right at Christmas and shit. So we bumped it a little earlier in the month. We're probably going to announce that at some point in like the near, I don't know, sometime the next couple months, few months, whatever. And yeah, I don't know next year what we're doing. We have some things in the works, but nothing I can speak on just yet.
Right. So, you talked about this being on like self-released on your own label now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like The Heart is the start of a new era for Grayscale?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think our band, we just look at it like it was all the things we loved about all the elements of our first three records on Fearless, which Adornment, Nella Vita, and Umbra. All of the things we loved about those records as artists, we just took those things we loved and we put it into one. It has all the components that we love about from those albums, kind of put into one into one space. And also the way we recorded it was done, so much more of it was recorded like live in the room than in the computer. And I think that comes through, especially like Not Afraid to Die, the single. If you listen
Right.
to, you can hear the room so much in that recording. We went in with the intention with this record where like all the instrumentation of that Not Afraid to Die single, like the one that came out, well, even the album version, it's the same production. It's just mixed a little bit differently. Um, all of the instrumentation was recorded at the same time live. So that, like,
Right.
everything you're hearing, drums, bass, guitars, was one take of the band in a room all at once, mic'd up. And I think that's just like, and then there were some things we went and we punched in and tightened here and there and vocals, whatever. But like, I think starting all of the songs on The Heart started with that. We would do 25 takes of just doing the song all in the room at the same time and pick one. And that felt good. That felt like you're hearing the performance, you're hearing the guitar playing, you're hearing Dallas's like, fucking foot hit the pedal on the piano, and you're hearing the floor, like all those little things, like the playability, like all of those actual things that, maybe on our first three records, we weren't good enough where we would have had to tune it a little more or snap it to the grid a little tighter. The drums aren't perfectly,
Right.
nothing's perfectly on time. Nothing's perfectly tuned. And I think when you limit how much technology you're using, it forces the parts to be better. It forces your performance to be better. And I think going in with that intention, starting, 12 songs or 11 songs or whatever on the record with like a single take of the band and then building from there, made this like a really profound record for us. And I would say like the beginning of kind of chapter 2 in a lot of ways. Like I feel like we're like an adult rock band now, as before it was like we were just kind of like kids figuring it out. And there's beauty to both sides of it, and I love equal part of it. I love both parts of it equally, rather. But definitely, I think we're in the best place we've ever been, and we're really excited about it.
Circling back to that notion of authenticity, I think people, listeners in particular, really like little nuances like that. Like you mentioned, the sound of the foot pedal on the piano and little things like that that make it feel like a live performance, that sets it apart from something that's maybe a little bit overproduced, over polished up and such. So I love hearing that. And like I said, I listened to the album last night and it just kind of put me in a good headspace when I was relaxing at home. So speaking of relaxing, how does Collin recalibrate himself outside of music?
By not listening to music is the first thing. But no, I love to travel. Traveling is my favorite thing in the world, on par or above music. I think I'm like very blessed to be able to travel. I've done 11, 12 laps around the US with my best friends since I was 22. Like I'm very, very fortunate and blessed to be able to do that. We went to Australia last year. I'm sorry. I went to Australia in fucking April. I can't even remember. For the first time, that was for all of us. And we toured and played every major city in Australia. We're going to Europe, UK. I mean, we'll have played so many countries, multiple continents this year, just us. And, I think staying in Europe, UK later and going to a soccer game or whatever. And, if we didn't have Mayday Parade, the American tour right after Australia, we would have stayed and probably hopped around to like some of the Pacific Islands, like Indonesia, whatever. So traveling and how touring and traveling kind of intersect, or like, I'm very blessed to have that. But, I think, even beyond that, when I'm home from tour, like I'll give myself a little bit of grace, and then I'll go somewhere and go on a hike or somewhere cool. And yes, I would say travel. I would say lifting and running is really important for me. Reading, I haven't done a good job reading this year, but reading and journaling obviously is a huge part of my life and my emotional kind of processing. I've been really into like wellness stuff recently. Like I've always liked hot tubs and saunas and shit, but I've been really into like the cold plunge thing recently.
Yeah.
So lifting and like going on a run and then like jumping into like a cold plunge for 12 minutes or as long as you can kind of bear it. That's been a really good thing for me too.
My closing question for every single guest that I have on the show is a unique one, and I expect your answer to be no less than unique also. And it's very simple. What's your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it is today, given your life experience?
Oh, that's a good question, man. I think, man, I think having empathy for people. I think having empathy is probably my answer. Um, I think just like focusing on yourself. I think like focusing not in a selfish way, but in a way of like don't worry so much what other people think. Like if everybody's kind of focusing on like loving themselves, loving the people in their circle, having empathy for people when they're going through things, having empathy for people and kind of knowing what you don't know. Like I think I'm very early can be like, I don't know everything about X topic. And like, you should educate yourself. And, I do my best certainly, but I also like, I don't, unless I'm like really, really, in a place where like I know something I can speak on, I listen more than I talk. You know what I mean? And I think that and empathy, those are my main things.
Awesome, man. Tell everybody where they can find Grayscale online.
It's at Grayscale PA for socials. It's at Grayscale PA for everything. Grayscale on Spotify.
In case you are local to me, Grayscale is going to be playing with Our Last Night on August 12th at the Astro Amphitheater in La Vista, Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska suburb. I'm going to try and make it out. All of you should too. Collin, thank you so much for jumping on the pod. It's been a fantastic conversation that kind of goes beyond just talking about the band, right?
For sure, brother. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, the world is a much better place with you in it. Thanks for doing the show, man.
Thanks, man.